How do you go from being the dirtiest player in the NFL, someone that your teammates regard as an asshole, to being a really good teammate and leader and a Super Bowl champion? It's a great question, and a question that we can all answer today on Equal Matters. My name is Rob Hunter. I'm a communications coach, former radio broadcaster, and this is really a story about the power of clear communication, how important your voice is. Ndamukong Suh, you remember him? He played for numerous NFL teams. He was drafted by the Lions, played for the Dolphins, and jumped around quite a bit in the NFL. He started his career as a number 2 draft pick of the Detroit Lions. In his rookie season, set the record for fines in the NFL for conduct unbecoming on the field. He was nasty. He kicked people. He pulled people's helmets off. He took cheap shots, kicked guys in the groin. That was Ndamukong Suh's style of play. He was a defensive tackle, and he was really, really, really good at it. And really nasty. So he plays his first few years in Detroit, and then the Miami Dolphins come in and they offer him a bunch of money because he plays really, really well. He sacks the quarterback. He causes fumbles. He's tackling running backs behind the line. And he's voted as his rookie, the 50th best player in the NFL by people in the NFL. That's how good this guy is. So he signs a record contract with the Miami Dolphins, and he comes in thinking he's the hotness. And he's the leader simply because of the size of his contract. And he admits this in this article in the Athletic. And in the Athletic, the article is called "My Harshness in a Players Only Meeting Taught Me the Value of Emotional Intelligence." And emotional intelligence comes out in the way that you communicate, in the way that you present yourself. And that's why Ndamukong Suh went on this journey to learn these 3 skills that he had on the football field. But he had to translate into his style of leadership. Because if you are that big contract guy and you sign a record contract and you come onto a new team and you want to win, you want to win a Super Bowl. That's everybody, well, not everybody's, but most people in football's dream is to win the Super Bowl. So Ndamukong Suh sets out on this new journey, new team, new contract, and wants to be the man in the locker room. And he gets fired up because the team started losing. They were so bad, they fired the coach 5 games into that season when he signed for the Dolphins. New coach comes in, and he's an interim coach, and his toughness lasts a couple of games, and then things start to fizzle. And that's when Ndamukong Suh got motivated to motivate his team. And he said, I'm going to be here not only because of my contract, but because I'm going to continue to play at a high level. The question is if you're going to be here next year. And imagine saying that filled with a team that is struggling. Basically saying, I don't know where you're going to be next year, but I'm going to be right here. So you better play or you're not going to have a job. And you want to lead the team. You want people to respond to you because we often see on TV that this is the motivational tactic that people use, leaders use, try to yell at you and shame you into performance, which, look, it may work on TV and it may even work in the real life for a little while, but eventually you may not even notice, but the performance will start to slip because it's just not a good leadership tactic. And that's what Suh says. He says, I was too hostile, too direct. And there is something to be said for directness. And what I teach is a method called clear communication. And clear is a directness because it helps you get your point across quickly and clearly, but it's not a harshness. And sometimes there's a little bit of a difference between the two, being direct and being harsh. Because communication, when you think about it, is really 3 things. What you say, when you say it, and how you say it. That's it. That doesn't make it easy because it's certainly not easy, and it does require these 3 skills. So after Ndamukong Suh realizes no one on the team is responding to him because he's a jerk, he got pulled aside and he said, what's happening? And one of the vice presidents of the team or whatever said, it's the way you're communicating. It's just not landing. So you have to learn things about your teammates. And that's where the 3 skills come in handy because clear communication is really about connecting with your audience. And whatever that audience is in front of you. It could be an audience of 1. It could be your partner, your spouse, your kids. It could be your work team. It could be your family. Could be anyone you come into contact with, the cashier at the grocery store, the barista at the coffee shop. It's all about connecting to your audience. And in order to do so, you have to learn to be resilient, adaptable, and supportive. And we'll walk through Suh's examples of this. So as he wanted to become a better teammate and leader and eventually win the Super Bowl, that's exactly what he started to do. He started to get to know his teammates a little bit. I'm going to find the quote here for you. Here's what he said, and this is again in the Athletic article. As a leader, you have to get to know people before you can really approach them. The trials and tribulations they've gone through, how they grew up, all those things. If you don't, you'll have a hard time getting your message across. And that's that adaptability to that audience. So he's bridging two gaps here, because when you start to learn about people and where they come from and their stories, their experiences and how they tell them to you, you're going to find areas that open you up because you hadn't considered that perspective before, because we're all have our own perspectives. And the more you get other people's perspectives, the more resilient you become, because what is resiliency? It's the ability to disagree with the current moment. It is being able to get through that current moment. And resiliency is tested in a lot of ways. It's tested in your patience. It's tested in your ability to listen. And when you're able to listen and hear where people disagree and not react to what happens in your body, because that's that emotion, right? The more you expand and the more resilient you become for the other tests that come your way in life. And I learned that so many different ways in the radio industry, in chasing down stories and bumping in against your own belief system and having that belief system challenged. So I did an undercover investigation along the border in 2007, the Arizona-Mexico border. And I had these preconceived notions about what the truth was at the border. There's many different silos, right? There's the law enforcement silo and the government silo that comes with that, that paints a certain picture of danger on the border because of drug smuggling, human smuggling. And that actually is true. It actually happens. It is dangerous. But then there's the opportunity side of migration, and that happens on both sides of the border. There's a huge economy to smuggle people and drugs into the country, and there's a huge economy to hire people to come in. Supply and demand, a universal rule. So when you start putting all these pieces together, you start to broaden your perspective and you understand the whole picture. And sometimes that tests you, and that test is that resiliency build. Anything that you create resistance with is where you grow your resistance, including through conversation. So that's what Suh started to learn. And then he realized that the more he asked people, the more adaptable he became, adapting to his audience. Emotional intelligence is what he says, taught me to be invested in somebody and learn about who and how they are. Imagine that. Who and how they are. Because that gives you the ability to be adaptable to what they want. I used to do this in my job interviews. I used to run a small team of, we called them technical directors. They basically ran the operations of the radio station during a radio show. And during my interview process, I would ask them these non-work related questions because I like to get to know people. I'm always curious. But it also helps me deliver better feedback when I need to, because I know who they are, I know what their goals are. So I'm adaptable to them because I want the feedback to be constructive, not to pat myself on the back, because it doesn't matter what I say unless the audience, my audience, an audience of 1,000, a million, understands it. And then that third part is supportive. And this is critical. I'll go back to the technical director example. I wanted to know what their goals were as individuals so I could support them towards reaching their goals, whether or not it was working with me or not, whether it was their next adventure. You try to help put them in that position, because when you know their goals and you want to help them achieve it, they'll help you achieve your goals. So I'll give you one example. One young lady I hired wanted a full-time position, and we just didn't have any. But I said, okay, well, obviously I'll be a reference for anyone that you can find. But in the meantime, if there's any extra shifts that come up, I'll give you the option to do them. And we'll try to get you as many hours as we can. So that helped me fill shifts when I needed. and helped her make a little bit more money that she wanted and put something extra on the resume with all the versatility that she was gaining from picking up all these shifts. So that's what being supportive is, and that's what Ndamukong Suh finally understood. He thought he could be a jerk and get his way to a Super Bowl. But ultimately, he says, I believe emotional intelligence, that's clear communication, really. I believe that clear communication is the core competency for building strong, lasting relationships and a truly successful life. And that's really what this skill of clear communication teaches you, because in this subset of skills that we've been talking about, resiliency, adaptability, and being supportive, that's how you maneuver. That's how you gain ground. That's how you build strong relationships. That's how you build a strong team, whether, again, going back to whether that's your family unit, your friendship units, and beyond, your personal and professional relationships. And the great part about what happened to Ndamukong Suh is eventually he stopped getting as many misconduct penalties and ended up playing in 3 Super Bowls, winning one of them with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And at that point, he was regarded as a pretty good teammate and even showed some leadership abilities and leadership qualities that you'd want, because in order to get to the Super Bowl, you have to. So I love it when athletes show us how important communication is, because there are no higher stakes than in American sports when it comes to teams playing together. And playing together well requires excellent communication. It requires being resilient with each other, not only because you go through an entire season, and imagine a football season, the wear and tear on your body, the strength that it takes, not only the season, but in the preseason, the offseason, as you're training and training and training, to play 17 football games and then hopefully play a couple more in the playoffs. You got to be resilient. And not just on the field, but you got to be resilient as a team, and you got to grow. And that second part, you got to adapt together. So as your teammates adapt, you adapt to them. That doesn't mean you don't get what you want. You don't get to say what you want. You can always say what you want, but there's always an effective way to say what you want so that your audience understands it, appreciates it in a way, and maybe will even act on it, right? At the very least, you want to be understood. And doesn't mean you have to be a jerk or have to be too direct. And that third part that Sue learned, and we all learn, is you got to support one another as a team. So that border project I mentioned, the 5 of us, our radio team, we stuck together through thick and thin. We took some risks. We did them all together. We had each other's backs in every moment. And that's what it took for that project to succeed. And on that trip, we met a man alone in the desert, a migrant who had been left behind. He was with a group, but that group was not supportive. Adaptive? Nah. It's a tough environment out there in the desert. Resilient for sure. So they had maybe 1.5 to 2 of the skills, but they weren't supportive, and they left a man behind. So you see the importance of this critical skill. And how you showcase those skills is through how you communicate with your team, your family. And I love that, of all people, Ndamukong Suh, who was kicking people on the football field and playing dirty, realized this and was able to utilize it to not only achieve his dream of being a Super Bowl champion, but with what he's doing now. He's got his own podcast. He's got his media presence. So he has transformed his life because he transformed the way he communicates. That right there is awesome. Thanks for listening to Equal Matters. My name is Rob Hunter. Visit me at robhunter.me. We'll talk again soon.